Good morning, everybody. If you could grab your seats, we're going to get started. For those of you I haven't met yet or don't know from years of coming to this conference, I'm Steve Smith. I'm the editorial director of events here. I'm responsible for lassoing many of you here, so you're welcome. The grits are out there, so please try the grits. If you're a northerner who have never tried grits, they're there for a reason to introduce you to grits, so try them. I want to start this morning with a little bit of a palate cleanser. Let me bring up our first slide. For those of you who haven't seen the New York Times this morning, this is a wonderful introduction. Apropos to our conference, New York Times revealed this morning that Facebook had been sharing deep data for many, many years with major device manufacturers, everybody from Apple to BlackBerry, and many believe in violation of their own FTC agreement. This shouldn't come as a surprise. We've been seeing this for a while, but it certainly speaks directly to the theme of this event, which is restoring direct relationships between media companies and our customers. The first few years of this event really had been about disintermediation. It really had been about distribution across what we were calling at the time platforms, but I think now is very clear we're not platforms at all. Really, we're just aggregators. Platforms let you build businesses. A lot of what we were calling platforms really don't let publishers build businesses. And now we're starting to see the needle move back. We're starting to see that, that the distribution channels are starting to wane and diversify, and that what they were doing all along was really just scraping and gathering, both data and content. And the purpose of this event really is to start focusing back on that theme of reestablishing direct relationships with customers, building real businesses again on that idea. And there's some sign that we're seeing real movement among consumers too in this chart. And again, I'll be posting all of this so you'll see it. You can see it later in the day. We're really starting to see some diversification, not only a drop in Facebook's share of audience referrals, but also we're starting to see some diversification along other channels. Channels like Instagram, to some degree because of Instagram stories, but also Flipboard, LinkedIn, even YouTube. We're starting to see the audience diversify a bit in the set of referrals, and that's a good sign. But we're also seeing some other signs that really point towards a renaissance of direct relationships. In mid-2016, we actually saw a flip, and search referrals regained dominance over social referrals. This was a good sign, I think, as Tony was showing. We see that search is a driver of greater lifetime value for a lot of publishers than social was. And as I talk to publishers, I have heard over the last year especially much greater emphasis on their SEO and SEM programs in driving audience. But also, another one, this one is hard to see, but in essence here, mobile, of course, traditionally was the thing that helped hyper-accelerate social's dominance because of simply the nature of the small screen. Aggregation had special power on mobile. But one of the things that we also saw, and this is from Chartbeat, that showed us in recent months we've seen a critical turning point where direct traffic finally started crossing over with social referrals, and we started seeing mobile customers really start veering towards individual brands and starting to move directly back to brands. All of this suggests that we're at a moment where there is a real opportunity. We're seeing the needle move somewhat. We're seeing consumers start to pay closer attention to the brands that they choose, and to make more conscious decisions in the ways in which they're consuming their media. It's not just changes in the platforms that are driving this. Now, to be sure, we're also seeing direct investment in content, and it's not just at the top tier. We talk a lot about heightened subscription rates at Washington Post and New York Times, but there's more. And one of the things that we wanted to explore over the next few days is the ways in which this renaissance of direct relationships is really cutting across the board and moving among all publishers, or at least the ways in which more publishers can leverage it. Now, what we're seeing and what we've been seeing over the last few years is not just about media. It's about all brands. This, by the way, is from the Havas brand meaning study about how consumers look at brands generally. And they found that almost 3/4 of people say the brands that they use every day, they really don't care that much about. If they went away tomorrow, it wouldn't bother them. And they expect their brands to behave in more meaningful ways towards them and to be a part of their everyday life in a more meaningful way than they are. Most say they're not. And worse, most consider content out in the marketplace now more clutter than of value. And we're seeing some common threads here, not just among, say, the CPGs and consumer product brands, but also among media. And I think one of the things that's happening among the CPGs and consumer brands really crosses over with media. For instance, we're seeing as many multinational CPG companies are conglomerating, at the same time, we're seeing this new taste for different kinds of brands, a different understanding of what brand is and how it's built and how trust is established. And that's coming through direct brands. The ANA recently announced that most of the growth in revenue among major brands is really happening among the direct brands. That's where we're seeing most of the growth. And that means we're starting to see really curious and interesting things like wool sneakers, like toothbrush subscriptions, like razor subscriptions, like, try before you buy sunglasses. Like, who would have guessed 3 years ago we'd have online mattress wars among mattress providers? And all of these are coming from a new generation of direct brands that are establishing new relationships. And it's based on niche, on the local, on the idiosyncratic, the highly personable, transparent operations, and responsiveness. And all of those also translate into some of the media brands that really we should be taking note of, because in many ways they're following a lot of those same trends, and we're seeing it happen in media as well. We're seeing those same brand trends towards some of these very same qualities, and consumers veer towards them in ways that are important for everyone to notice. Publications like The Skim, like Quartz, like The Information, like Axios, like Thrillist, like many more that all of you could mention. It's not surprising, for instance, as Tony was mentioning, that email is one of the key channels for a lot of these brands. It is still, after all these years, the most connected, the most personable, and the most personal of all of the channels that we have. And these follow a lot of the same qualities that many of the direct consumer brands also follow. They're very narrowly focused, they're very voice-driven, they're very values-informed, they're highly personable, and they're also extremely responsive and take a lot of direct response and interact with their readers, often in highly personal ways. And they also reestablish transparency. This is one of the best examples that I know of a new way of interacting, the Wirecutter, which the New York Times wisely bought several years ago. If you go and read a Wirecutter article, one of the things that Wirecutter does really well is in every article, build brand and trust through total radical transparency in almost painstaking ways. Every reviewer of a product answers the basic reader question, who the hell are you to tell me what to buy? And they answer that question in every article. This is who I am, this is what I know, this is what I've tried, this is the way we did this product. And it's exhaustive, almost comic, the way they do it at Wirecutter. But it's a real example of the ways in which transparency builds trust from the bottom up. And I think it's a good example of one of those new direct brands that can teach us all something. And those are the things that we're going to be talking about over the next few days. I think that convergence between consumer product brands and media brands, I think, is really happening, and we're seeing this broader shift that media is playing a part of. For those of you who are new to the summit, I just want to remind you of a couple of basic tenets of our Insider Summits. Everything on stage is on the record and being live streamed over MediaPost. So, by the way, if you want to ping one of your colleagues to tune in, they can. We'll also be posting these videos by the end of the morning, so you'll see them there and can refer to them there. Everything off stage is off the record. We have reporters here and editors like me here, but we won't quote anyone unless they give us explicit permission to. We won't report on anything that happens off stage. And that includes the roundtables. And I want to underscore the importance of the roundtables to these summits. We've been doing these summits for now over 12 years. And this format really works. Start with a kind of a core of content that seeds the discussion, but the roundtables where you all break out into 3 or 4 tables at the end of the morning and take up and extend one of these topics into peer-to-peer discussions about how this relates to your business, the questions that you want to pursue, and teach one another in these roundtables is really the core. I urge you, At 12 o'clock, don't just grab your phone and go back and do some work before you hit the golf links. The roundtables are really core to the experience. And we're going to start this morning with a keynote that I think speaks directly to this issue of moving from a distribution strategy to a product strategy, of moving towards relationships and not just scale. And let me ask Rob Barrett to come up. He's the president of digital media at Hearst Newspapers. Rob oversees all of the digital revenue and product innovation at Hearst Newspapers. Many of you, I think, remember Rob from many years at Yahoo, but before that, he was at the Los Angeles Times. He helped launch abcnews.com and time.com. And I think, Rob, you started right down the road in Raleigh, didn't you? You did, at the Observer. Please welcome Rob Barrett.